Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. He's the Associate General Counsel, Department of Homeland Security. Mr. Sutherland's bio is in your handout, so in the interest of time, I will let you read that after his comments. You also should have a copy of the executive order, the latest executive order signed by President Trump, and we're going to get some information about what that all means. And I will turn it over to Mr. Sutherland.
Good morning. We're negotiating up here. How many more minutes do I get? I get paid by the minute. So, particularly anxious. Thank you for the invitation. I've been looking forward to this. I spent my 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade years in Laredo. My dad was in the Customs Service, really from northern Maine. You go on Route 95 and you go all the way to the top, and we lived in the last house on the left. We were in the customs house there, and somehow we got transferred down here to Laredo. So this is the first time I've been back to South Texas, and it wasn't that long ago that I won't tell you how long ago it was that I was there, but anyway, I don't remember a darn thing about it. But anyway, it's neat to be back here. I have a weighty responsibility. I have to wake you up. I have to entertain just a little bit, and I have to get you engaged on the topics that we're going to talk about today. So, the topics that you have, I'm really excited about the conference. Usually when I go to a conference, I do the part that I'm supposed to do, and then I pop into one or two other things, and then I, go out and take some conference calls or something like that in certain parts. I couldn't find a single session today that I thought, told my guys, they call me at X time because I won't be busy then. I'm really looking forward to all these panels, and I'm sure you are too. The title that I have for this, I need to reference. I had some great language after that. Cybersecurity in 2017, and then I had some really brilliant additional language. I can't remember what it is. But Jeff Adicott is a man of few words, and he knew that his bulletin that he was giving you didn't have space for my additional expanse of 25 words, and so he put a plus there. So just know that there was a lot embedded in that plus. I can't even remember what it was, but I'm sure it was fascinating. But just to let you know, usually I titled this this talk, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And I thought that might actually, in addition to hopefully being entertaining, it is true. And as we go along, I'll describe that for you just a little bit. What I thought I would do is talk a little bit about who's doing what, and then where are we going. I think it's really great you're going to see Chairman McCall this afternoon, because we respect him so highly and his staff. We're so fortunate to have him in Washington at this time, and can't say that about everybody, but we're sure lucky to have him. And you're going to hear a lot, I think, from him too. So I hope some of my comments about where we are now and where we're going, he shaped a lot of that, and he's going to be a big player in where we're going. It'll be interesting to see how he talks about that going forward. So the first part here, I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and then describe what we do in relation to what others do as well. So I am the General Counsel to the component of the Department of Homeland Security that's responsible for cybersecurity, telecommunications, biometrics, something else fascinating that I've just forgotten, and infrastructure resilience program. So we're an organization of risk management professionals and cybersecurity professionals. We used to be an office of 300 or 400 people attached to the headquarters. We've grown now to 4,000, about 4,000 full-time employees, 17,000 when you count the contractors. We have over $3 billion in budget. And so Congressman McCall, recognizing that, has been saying to us, you are no longer an office attached to the headquarters, we need to launch you as the next operating component of the Department of Homeland Security. Just like TSA or Secret Service or FEMA, we would be that. He's actually working hard on a bill now that I hope he'll mention to rename us, cast us with a new vision, and set us out as a new agency within the Department of Homeland Security. I think we're negotiating over the name, but he passed a bill through the House last year that has the name Cyber and Infrastructure Protection Agency. And I hope that's a little bit more descriptive of what we're all about. So I'm going to be the general counsel of the Cyber and Infrastructure Protection Agency. Let me just walk you through what we do and what we do in relation to other people. I wrote this speech when our former undersecretary called me one Sunday night, and she was so sick, and she said, I'm sick and I got to be in Nashville tomorrow morning and give a speech. Can you go get on a plane and give this speech? I said, sure. And she said, don't worry, they've already written a speech for me. So she emailed it over to me. I got on the airplane, I started flipping through it, and I realized it was a piece of junk. You ever had that happen before? She was brilliant, so she could make anything come. But anyway, for me, I'm looking at this like, wow, what am I going to do? So I took the, you know, when they give you the little peanuts and the napkin. So I used the napkin at least. And anyway, so what I came up with was threes, combinations of threes. So that's what you're going to see throughout this. So 3 distinctives that we bring to the cybersecurity marketplace. What is DHS doing in this space? There are 3 distinctives that we bring. The first is our unparalleled privacy and civil rights protection structures. When the Department of Homeland Security started, the Congress knew that if we were going to have what some called an interior ministry, there's a lot of negative connotations to interior ministries. We had to do some things to deal with that. And one of the things that the Congress did, they tried some interesting innovations. One of the things that they did was they created a privacy and civil liberty structure within the department. There were actually 2 people in the secretary's senior leadership. So the senior leadership of the department is the head of TSA, the head of Secret Service, and the head of FEMA. And 2 other colleagues are people who do nothing but look at civil liberties issues. There's the Chief Privacy Officer and the Officer for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. I served as that first Officer for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, just a tremendous job. And I started the same day as the Chief Privacy Officer, and the 2 of us kind of looked at each other and said, what do we do now? And we had a lot of fun trying to build this kind of structure. But Congressman McCall, it's so interesting and I guess in a way gratifying to see it come some years later when we were debating all the cybersecurity legislation about a year and a half ago. Congressman McCall said this. He said, DHS has some of the strongest privacy protection mechanisms in the federal government. Such built-in privacy oversight is an important reason why DHS is the leading civilian interface for these exchanges. That is a reason why Congressman McCall argued for and was successful among his colleagues in arguing for giving DHS a lot of the authorities that we have been given over the past couple of years, and you'll see in the executive order as well. I've just written a law review article on this subject, so I could speak to it for another 45 minutes, and I'm gathering you prefer that I keep going. So I'll just mention that if there's more you'd like to talk about there, I'd love to talk to you about it. The second distinctive we bring is we have unique experience in dealing with public-private partnerships. After Hurricane Katrina, we really realized our whole model needs to change when we began to realize that Walmart and Target, they had the food, they had the water, they had the blankets, we didn't have them. And so we really changed our way of thinking, and really our whole department is focused around public-private partnerships, from Customs and Border Protection to Coast Guard, and then of course to us. Cybersecurity is a public-private partnership. And the third is that we're a civilian, non-law enforcement, non-intelligence interface with the public. So a company wants to share information with the government, they can do that with a civilian, non-law enforcement, non-intelligence function of the government, and that's one of the advantages that we bring. We have three roles in cybersecurity. This is the humor. Do you see the humor in this? There's 4 rules. There's 4 rules. But I'm telling you, I was on the airplane, and I had 3 in my mind, 3, and then I realized, well, this slide doesn't work, but oh, what the heck, I'm calling it the same thing. So you'll remember this slide at least. 3 roles for DHS and cybersecurity, but there are really 4. And I'd like to spend a little bit more time here than other places because it's really, we're talking about what is a wide range of organizations do in cybersecurity. With regard to the types of functions that we have, one is network defense, defending our networks. One is law enforcement, investigating who's broken in, who's done the wrong thing. The third is intelligence analysis, looking long term. Who are our adversaries? What are they up to? Where might they go? A lot of that's in the classified space. And then the fourth is research. How do we do cutting edge research? How do we explore different issue areas or opportunities within the cybersecurity field? Those are 4 basic areas of work. So within the Department of Homeland Security, network defense falls to us, NPPD. I hate for you to even remember that term because Chairman's hopefully going to change it soon, but our organization is called the National Protection and Programs Directorate. As I said, that's a term without meaning. We've done a bunch of lawyers thought it up, to be honest with you. And we came up with a generic phrasing that seemed to work, but doesn't really describe much. Very lawyer-like, isn't it? Anyway, NPPD is our organization, and we're responsible for network defense. I'll go into that just more as we talk, but that's our chief responsibility. Who else performs this function? Well, the DoD does for the .mil environment. And then a lot of private sector companies are very busy in this space. I'm sure some of you may be in the room or are from firms like that, big and small, who are helping with network defense. Second is law enforcement. The DHS entity that's responsible there is the Secret Service. I don't know, do we have anybody from Secret Service here today? No? I should have done that. I should have tried to make sure that somebody from the Secret Service was here, but also others who perform this function. The FBI is obviously very active in this, and a lot of state governments are. Anybody from FBI here today? No? Okay, should have done that. Usually when I go out, I try to make sure there's an FBI agent and a Secret Service agent here, because it's important for those of you who run businesses locally to have relationships with those 2 organizations. Have a cup of coffee, talk to them, be on a first-name basis, because when you need them, you don't want to be introducing yourself for the first time, and they're very glad to have those kind of relationship opportunities. The third one is intelligence analysis. We have an intelligence unit within the department, several hundred people, called Intelligence and Analysis, and they do analytic work in all sorts of different areas, but cybersecurity is one of them. Who else does this? There's an organization that is just brand new within the Office of the Director of National Intelligence called the CTIC. But there's 2 I's in there, so you have to have a little bit of stutter in there to C to IC. There's 2 I's. And it stands for Cyber Threat Intelligence Integration Center. So all the different intelligence agencies that are doing cyber threat intelligence, the ODNI pulls them together, organizes them. They're the Intelligence Integration Center. Obviously NSA and a number of other 3-letter agencies are very active in this area as well. And then research. We have a whole directorate called Science and Technology, several hundred people involved in research in many, many different areas, and cyber is one of them. I mean, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars in doing research that's usually the 5-year, the 10-year down the road kind of look. Others perform this function, a lot of universities, a lot of private sector companies too are in this space. They figure they can monetize that kind of research. So that's a broad overview of who's doing what. Simplified, I'm sure, but it's a broad overview of who's doing what. And I hope you remember the slide because it's 3 roles and it's really 4. Okay. 3 customer bases that we serve. We serve federal civilian executive branch. So after the OPM breach, was our wake-up call in the federal government. Just as maybe Target was to retailers, OPM was to the federal government. I had phone calls from cabinet officers on my cell phone, from other agencies. Can you help us find such and such? I need help in such an area. It caught people's attention. And I'm not going to ask, but you'll see several hands around here of people who were impacted by the OPM data breach. So they caught all of our attention. We were already working in this space, but this really heightened our ability to get traction there. We do a lot of work there, and the executive order that I'm going to talk about in a minute about where we're going really is focused a lot there. We also work with state, local, and tribal and territorial governments and the private sector. Anybody in the private sector is a potential customer to us. We do not operate in a regulatory environment. Cybersecurity is not a regulatory environment. It's a voluntary environment. The Congress made that decision some years ago that they couldn't figure out a way to tell X company and Y company, you must do this or you will face these penalties, as we do in most regulatory environments. So instead we have a voluntary environment, and so we really are here to offer resources to you. So I am from the government, I'm here to help, and I have no other agenda. It's free. Well, it's not free, but it's free. These are our customer bases. You'll see that of our customer bases, pretty much all that's excluded is the .mil and the intelligence community. Other than that, we can have relationship and do have relationship all across the country, really. We offer 3 services: best practices, really the development of best practices. We offer incident response, what happens if things go wrong, and then we offer a platform for information sharing. So let me just give you 2 seconds on each one of these. Best practices. My clients put a number on this. They put 80%, 15%, 5%. And the reason why they do that is because they say about 80% of a company's efforts should be in the area of best practices. We as lawyers, we always put about 80% on incident response. I guess it's because we're lawyers and we chase ambulances. You know, something goes wrong, that's a good day for a lawyer. That's not a good day for a company if you spend 80% of your time trying to figure out how to prevent problems from ultimately happening. But in just something worth thinking about as the conference goes along here, we do have a panel later on data breach incidents. And that's extremely important, but we're suggesting you spend about 80% of your time thinking about how to never get to that place. And we have all sorts of best practices. We have on our website, we have a cyber resilience review. It's something a company can download and walk through about 10 different categories of questions. Each one has 20, 30 questions underneath it. It's really built for a CIO or a CISO risk officer. And one of the very large company told me that they just use it as their baseline. They just hit print and fill it out and keep it, and they use it as their baseline. They actually use it for companies coming in that want to do work with them, require them to document their cybersecurity practice, and they use that. I'm not suggesting, but I'm just telling you it's one useful tool that we have there. And we do all sorts of other things to promote best practices. We're pushing out alerts all the time that are free. We have communities of interest. If you're a certain type of company, maybe more sophisticated in this space, we have a group of about 200 companies that have joined us in a kind of an intimate discussion. You have to sign a legal agreement with us. We share more things with you than you normally would get. You get more benefit out of it. It's only for companies that have the capacity to absorb more, but it's a really great initiative for some of those particular companies. So there's all sorts of different ways to develop best practices. On incident response, we do send teams. We have flyaway teams. Today, reading last night on the plane or this morning about some incident response teams we're sending into some critical areas. So we do have incident response teams. We tend to send them to either federal agencies, which is our chief, that's our friends, family, colleagues, or to companies of critical infrastructure, or to others as well. We have the statutory reason to send to others if there is a particular reason to be involved there. If there, for example, seem to be some tactics there that have some interest to us. It might be a small bank or small retailer, but there's something particular of interest to us that we think connects to something else. We might send a team there. We do a lot of remote incident response too. You can be in San Antonio and send stuff to us. And then the last thing I want to mention is information sharing. We operate a hub of information sharing. Chairman McCall really got this through statute. Hopefully you get the idea anyway. The circle in the middle is the NCIC, which is our National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center. It's the center of cyber information sharing for the federal government. There are a number of other centers like the NSA has a center, and etc. But this is the center through which the public interacts and corporations interact with the government. So information flows into our center, and then we push it out. And I hope you get the sense that from this picture that we're a hub of information sharing. Others in the federal government are feeding us. I mean, we've got sensors all around the federal network, so we're seeing everything that's happening. We're seeing that on a minute-to-minute basis. The private sector's coming in, international partners are coming in with information, and we're pushing back out in law enforcement as well. I don't like this slide for a reason. I love this slide, but I don't like this slide for one reason. We fully recognize that we are not the hub of information sharing. And that slide gives you that impression, doesn't it? We're right in the center of the hub. There are many hubs of information sharing, but we are fully aware that Washington, D.C. and our center is not the hub, is not the hub. It is one hub. And as you work with different companies, some of the big companies also have information sharing platforms, which we then connect to. The state has an information sharing hub. So there's a network of these hubs. I hope that helps. I love my slide, but there's limitations to it too. Let's see, 3 recent projects. I won't spend any time on this. I could spend 3 hours on this, but I'll just tell you we sent a team to the Ukraine a year and a half ago when there was a hack on their utility grid. Some of you know about it. If not, I'll tell you more about it on the side. There's a cyber attack on their utility grid. Several 100,000 people lost power, and we sent a forensics team afterwards there, and actually our former boss is in Ukraine right now, so a relationship with Ukraine, something to think through their really enormous cyber threats. We've developed the automated indicator sharing, which is a machine-to-machine sharing program. In other words, in the past, a company would, if they had some cyber incident, they could pick up the phone and call us or send us an email, same with the FBI or others, pick up the phone and call. That always involves a human being. And human beings are great, but we're slower than machines. There are advantages and disadvantages to machines and humans. One of the things is machines are faster, so we need to have faster. And the Congress has required us to create a program, which we're calling automated indicator sharing, of machine to machine. So companies can sign up. There's a legal agreement that our lawyers have negotiated. It's posted right on the page. If you want to sign up, it's free. You sign the terms of agreement, do a little bit of work to get your computer speaking to our computers. There's a taxonomy that can be implemented without too much trouble, and your computers hook right into our computers and you get our feed. It's really a remarkable opportunity, and we're in 1 year in on this, and a lot of really positive things have happened in that year, and I think we're getting ready really to see it explode. But it's if you're a company that buys a cyber threat intelligence feed, this is another one. They all have different advantages and strengths and weaknesses. This is another one. First of all, this one's free. That's always nice. And the second thing is this one has everything's hitting the .gov. All across the .gov, of which is quite a massive amount of information, you're benefiting from that. We also have 6, it could be more now, countries that are feeding in. It's a very rich strand of information that we've developed. Anyway, the last is the response to WannaCry, and given the limited time, I'm not going to spend any time there, but suffice it to say, we did a lot in terms of information sharing there from our international partners. They immediately were giving us indicators and signs, and we were able to plug them into AIS and a lot of other ways. Okay, so that's our 3s. Let's do, good, perfect. Let's do a few minutes about where are we going. That's kind of where we are, who's doing what, gives you a little bit of a sense of what DHS and some of our colleagues in government are all about. Why don't we talk a little bit about where are we going? I'm sure that you're as fascinated about all the developments in Washington as we are. That was supposed to make you laugh, but we were told that there would be an executive order on cybersecurity in the first days of the administration. We geared up for it, and for whatever reason it took a little bit longer, and there were other executive orders that kept my other colleagues in the Office of General Counsel extremely busy for a number of weeks. They're trying cases, defending cases all over the country. Well, we have this executive order. It's just been issued about 2 weeks ago, and it's a really great foundation for a new team to come in and learn and build from. Basically, what it does is it requires all the departments and agencies to write baseline reports. Where are we in X? Where are we in Y? Where are we in Z? And to propose recommendations about where we are. So where are we in X, plus some recommendations on where we should go. It is just a really great way for a new leadership to start their tenure. They're going to know where are we and where should we go. Right at the beginning of the administration. Very smart way to proceed. The EO is a little bit overwhelming to all of us because it requires 15 different reports to be written. So all of us are scrambling, and actually when I got this invitation, I really calculated out whether I could be away for a few days. These are critical. We get a lot of deadlines in 90 days, one in 45 days, and several more in 120 days. It's hard to be away as we work through all these things, but just gives you the sense of the pace. The pace is really picked up. We have 15 different reports to write, and somebody there at the White House is going to have a lot of work to do, because over the summer they're going to be reports stacking up on their desk, baselining where we are in a variety of different areas. But one of the neat things about it too is that it's catalyzing us to think. I think that some people have reacted to saying, "Oh, this is all just information you already have. You're just going to pile it together and send it up in a report." And maybe we've kind of thought that too. This won't be too hard. We've been thinking about these things. Let's just pile it up and staple it and send it off, and we're good. But it's really not like that. When you really are asked a hard question, we're seeing, there's a lot of thought, additional thought that we need to put into. We want to get an A on this project. We're not going to end in a C paper, so we've got to really think this through. And another thing that's doing is it's catalyzing interagency collaboration on projects that really matter to our country, where we have to really roll up our sleeves with the Commerce Department or the Justice Department or whoever on some projects that we wouldn't have done otherwise. So it's making us think, and it's catalyzing a lot of good thought. A lot of this may be things you will never see, but it's really stirring up a lot of, I think, good movement that we'll see over the upcoming years. So basically there are 3 sections to the executive order. You have it there with you. It's not particularly long, but it does have a lot of great content. I'll just take 10 minutes and give you some summary of it. The first is the cybersecurity of federal networks. The second section is the cybersecurity of critical infrastructure, private, so government sector, private sector specifically focused on critical infrastructure. And the third is cybersecurity for the nation, international issues, and a couple others that I'll mention. So that's basically how it's broken down. We really are breaking it down into 4 work streams. Let me just give you what those are. The first one tracks Section 1 on federal networks. And the executive order really links cybersecurity and innovation. It says that, for example, the executive branch has for too long accepted antiquated and difficult to defend information technology. We have a lot of old systems, as does the rest of industry, and that was one of the things apparently happening with that WannaCry ransom event. A lot of companies overseas or government agencies overseas were operating on really antiquated systems that there were no security patches for. The companies just didn't issue using really old equipment. But one of the things that the new team looking at this, their assessment is that we have a lot of interesting innovation going on in the information technology field. The federal government's got to buy that. We got to have an integrated, thoughtful way that we're going to track with the new developments in information technology and purchase that. That's a really interesting initiative and a multi-billion-dollar commitment. It's a big commitment to make, but it's an important one to make. The second thing is planning the deliberate modernization of federal IT. So I just said it costs multiple billions of dollars. Most of those multiple billions of dollars are going to be spent anyway. That's built into budgets for the next 10 years. And what the executive order is requiring is to thoughtfully purchase what you're going to purchase and make sure that it's integrated with security practices. So as we spend these multiple billions of dollars over the upcoming years, it needs to be thoughtful and it needs to be done with security in mind. The last bullet I want to mention here is it imposes risk management practices on federal agency heads. So for those of you in the private sector, what this is basically saying is that your CEO will be personally responsible for the cybersecurity outcomes of your company. And I'm not sure a lot of CEOs want to wear that. But your CEO is responsible. We have now felt this in the federal government as we've seen a couple of our colleagues over the past couple of years lose their jobs because their cybersecurity function was not handled appropriately. And that person going into that job probably never knew anything about cybersecurity or thought that was part of my life or my responsibility. It is part of your responsibility, and this EO says that specifically. It says the President will hold heads of executive departments and agencies accountable for managing the cybersecurity risk to their enterprise. This is your job, your job, your job, your job. Look them in the eyeballs, and this has got to be taken care of. And this is an interesting statement, an important statement. I think some of the regulators, particularly in financial areas, even in Europe, are beginning to make this kind of statement that CEOs of companies, your responsibility, this is not an information technology job. This is your job. And the executive order just goes on after that to say that effective risk management requires agency heads to lead integrated teams of senior executives with expertise in IT. Well, we knew that. It's an IT job, right? It's the IT job. No, we need integrated teams of senior executives in IT, security, budgeting, acquisition, law, privacy, and human resources. I talked to lawyers a lot of times in companies and asked them about cybersecurity issues, and it's just right over their head. They're not connected to these issues at all. And this executive order says, no, you need to run an integrated team that has lawyers, budgeting, everybody involved, because this is an enterprise-wide situation. The last thing I want to mention about that is no, that's right. Oh yeah, it's while the executive order is saying each one of you department heads, you're responsible, it's also saying that we, as the federal government, need to think about this enterprise-wide. So we have, I don't know if we're like you, but we have, 29 different CIOs responsible for 29 different enterprises. There is or was in the old administration, there was a federal CIO. That had to be the craziest job ever. They had no network to run. Basically a diplomat, just trying to talk to everybody, make them, hey, pat them on the back, things like that. The federal CIO had nothing, because there's all these separate networks, and each one of the CIOs think, oh, well, we have the most important stuff in government, and I can't tell you, probably my lawyers, we spent probably 50% of our time the past 2 years just negotiating with every federal agency to take the capabilities that the Congress had given us for free that they could have. 50% of our time negotiating with their lawyers just to take it free. It's yours. Well, everybody's got their own way and their own way of doing things, and this is trying to get us in a different place. Okay, sorry, I need to move more quickly, but that one gets me going. Okay, section 2 is about critical infrastructure. The focus really is on power plants, oil and gas pipelines, financial systems, telecom infrastructure, and others. That's not an exhaustive list. And one concept you should know about, I'll throw this out, is Section 9 companies. In the previous executive order of the Obama administration, Section 9 of the executive order required us to create a list of companies and assets that if there was a large cyber attack, it would have catastrophic effects on the nation if that asset was lost. Does that make sense? So it required us to identify companies or parts of a company that if it was hit by a cyber attack would have catastrophic effects on the country. Those are Section 9 companies. That's classified who's in those Section 9 companies. This executive order is trying to elbow us all in the ribs about Section 9 companies. Let's get on that job more strenuously. So it's directing us to engage with private sector leadership on these issues, even companies that are not Section 9 but are on the outskirts of those issues, and then identify additional measures to advance the security and resiliency of critical infrastructure. So hopefully we're going to see a really renewed effort to engage with all of you about these issues. What could we do better? What could you do better for you? What could we do better to help you? I know people out there in these areas are already seeing things that need to have done. What can we do to be helping you? The only problem with it is the engagement. This report is due in, I think it's 90 days, maybe 120 days, I can't remember. But so I think what we're going to do is write a report. I think what we're going to do is write a report kicking off engagement. So we won't see as much engagement as we want, but hopefully we'll see that over the upcoming months and years as we kind of kick off. Okay, the third is protect and defend, and this is really to generate plans to deter our adversaries and build upon international coalitions. I see some Air Force colleagues here, though this will resonate with them. And to build upon our international coalitions, where there's emerging international coalitions on some of these issues, and we need to really explore that. And a really important policy statement is it reiterates the United States' commitment to a free, open, and commercially interoperable global network. It's an important policy statement for us in international negotiations. And then the last thing this is a fourth work stream, even though there's three sections to the report. The third section of the executive order really has two pieces. And the last one is workforce, which, just to pick up on the Dean's comments, this is a new world. It's a new world. We just leave it at that. We're in a whole different place than we were before. We need a workforce that recognizes that. We need lawyers who understand this. We need to teach this in law school so the young lawyers come in prepared to go to law firms or become prosecutors or whatever, that they have some capacity to deal with technology and even in prosecuting crime that takes place in an online environment. It's just crime, but it's in an online environment. How do you understand that? We need new security professionals. We need people who are interested in IT to focus on the security side of IT, and all different areas we need to just revitalize our workforce. So this recognizes the need to develop and sustain a world-class civilian and military workforce. We're going to look at both public sector and private sector efforts to do all those things, to generate a new generation of people who are active here. And one of the really interesting things is the executive order calls for us to benchmark parallel efforts by other governments. Are we really falling behind the Estonians or the Australians or whoever? We should figure out what are they doing and learn from them, so we could try to benchmark our efforts off of what other governments are doing. Well, I hope that's a overview of the executive order. Is kind of where we're going. You can see just from the topics I've highlighted that we're going to have some busy people later in the summer who have a lot of reports to read on just almost any topic that you want to pick in cyber. There's going to be a report, but it also is catalyzing us to do things in different ways. So we'll issue our report, but half of what we're telling them are things we're already going to be working on and working on with our colleagues in other federal agencies that we may not have otherwise. So we have a pretty interesting, I think, next few years based on this baseline of reports. I am going to stay for the day, and I wish we could take questions, only we just don't have time to take questions now, but I'm here for the rest of the day, and I'd be glad to interact with you and answer questions or ask you questions. This is a learning experience for both of us. So I appreciate the time to open this up, and look forward to a great conference all day. Thanks, Jeff.